Talking about facing hard facts, the kind of facts that have politicians running a million miles to avoid. Result, thousands of children in real trouble. Today, like every year, the federal government gave its progress report on closing the gap between the lives of Aboriginal Australians and everyone else. And today, like every year, the results were bad, probably even worse than usual. 5 of the 7 key targets, no improvement or going backwards. Child mortality rates for Aboriginal children, double the rate for other children, double. Wagging school, Aboriginal children still 6 times more likely to skip school. What are their parents doing? And unemployment, twice as high among Aborigines. But then again, where are the jobs out bush? What do you expect? Now, I could go on with the stats, but you've heard all this before. Boring. You've also heard all those noble speeches we get every year from politicians on this topic, who then put on the most serious voices, maybe shed a tear or two, congratulate themselves for being so, you know, uplifting, but almost nothing changes. And why? Because politicians don't want to even think about what's actually perhaps the biggest problem here. They want to talk about everything else, like that, you know, old dead-end excuse, white racism, or in fact any excuse for looking anywhere except in a mirror. Here is Labor frontbencher Linda BURNEY.
Essentially, it's got a lot to do with poverty, entrenched poverty. It has a basis in racism, it has a basis in history, but it also has a basis in really poor living conditions.
Yes, history, racism. As for blaming poverty for these outcomes, that's actually confusing the symptoms with the cause. What is producing that poverty? Then there's that other reaction we get, you know, look over there instead, you know, check out this flashy and totally useless bit of gesture politics, whether it's activists demanding recognition of Aborigines in the Constitution, or sportsmen refusing to sing a supposedly racist national anthem, or again today, Labor's leader wanting a new advisory parliament of Aborigines.
Will the Prime Minister hold a referendum in this term to enshrine a First Nations voice to Parliament in our Constitution?
Sorry? That's going to fix Aboriginal children still dying at twice the average? That's going to get children sent to school instead of wagging? But I get it, you know, setting up a talk shop, that's easy. Fixing real problems on the ground, that can break your heart. But I have to say I was just as disappointed with the Prime Minister today, actually suggesting there were other positive ways of looking at today's figures, you know, the figures showing children dying young or not going to school.
We must see the gap we wish to close, not from our viewpoint, but from the viewpoint of Indigenous Australians, before we can hope to close it and make a real difference. I see the shortcomings. The targets that were set for Indigenous Australians, not by Indigenous Australians, do not celebrate the strengths, achievements and aspirations of Indigenous people.
Let's shift some goalposts or something. You know. Let's be frank first about these excuses. European settlement may have had a tiny role in these problems, but Aborigines were sure not living easy lives before whites came, for all their romantic fantasising of so-called Aboriginal historian Bruce Pascoe. As for white racism, this so-called racist society is actually pouring more than $30 billion a year to help just 500,000 Aborigines. And what's the result? No, we need an honest discussion of the kind that a few brave Aboriginal activists like Jacinta Price have pushed for and got smashed for, because they think that traditional Aboriginal culture, such as it now is, assumed to be, it does not cut it in 21st century Australia. It does not produce the living standards we want for Aborigines. Communal ownership of land, in fact, communism really, that does not work. Living where there are no jobs, that does not work. Not sending children to school, well, that clearly doesn't work. And having very patriarchal tribal leadership, that does not work. But if you expect our politicians to do that kind of truth-telling, forget it. Too scared of seeming racist, much easier if we keep letting Aboriginal children die young and not even ask what some are dying from.